How are firms adapting to accounting's shrinking talent pool? This is the Issues Watch podcast. Hi, I'm Don Meyer, Chief Growth Officer at the New Jersey Society of CPAs, and welcome to the Issues Watch podcast. In a recent Forbes article, Paul Peterson, CEO and managing partner of WIS, wrote that if you were designing the accounting profession from scratch today, it wouldn't look anything like the version most firms are still trying to maintain. The assumptions it was built on, that talent is abundant, career paths are linear, and manual work is the price of entry, no longer hold. Paul is here with me today to unpack how forces such as the thinning pipeline, career expectations, and of course, artificial intelligence are reshaping staffing strategies, skill development, and leadership priorities. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, Don. Thanks for having me today.
So let's start with the pipeline. We've mentioned these numbers on this podcast numerous times, fewer accounting majors, fewer grads sitting for the exam, et cetera. Your point was that it's not that young people don't want to work in accounting, it's that they don't want to work in accounting as it exists today. So please explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, I think that the connection for the young people coming in terms of what they expect, there's definitely a branding problem, right? Like when we sit with, whether it's our interns or entry levels, and we ask them simply, tell us what you've heard about accounting. What's the industry like? It's basically the same types of negative, like vibrations that we received 30 years ago. It was like, it's the same. And It's very interesting. It's changed so much. So there's a mismatch, I think, of what someone's expecting because of what they heard. But on the inside of many firms, they really have evolved. So I think we do have a branding problem. And I do think that we're seeing that in a way because there is a decline in, let's say, voluntary turnover. People are staying at their firms longer. So clearly there's been an improvement in the inner, let's say, culture of a firm. But somehow it's not translating out to where people are thinking, okay, maybe accounting is the right career path for me. And some of these things that I think I've heard are not true. Or we need people, professors or whoever, doing a better job, kind of evangelizing on behalf of our profession. So I think that's like the first thing. And I do think, though, the other challenge we have right now is there's some dissonance because I think as much as we've kind of improved, I do think with private equity, there is a little bit of a sliding back, so I think that that kind of noise is real. And I think that may stifle a little bit of, the progress that I think we've made in terms of just like more culturally driven, firms.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit like a kind of a game of whack-a-mole where you're trying to kind of beat back or beat down certain negative stereotypes about the profession, and when you feel like you've made progress, something else pops up that you then have to beat back again. But I do want to mention to our viewers and listeners that there is some good news, recent good news related to the pipeline. Because to be honest, the last 2 years I've kind of felt like Debbie Downer always sharing this negative information. But the past year, accounting enrollments were up. Applications for Masters of Accounting were also up. The Center for Audit Quality did some research that showed that the impressions of accounting are improving, so that's good. And I think at least some of that has to do with what firms are doing, as you were mentioning, and how firms are evolving. So how are firms responding to the pipeline challenge and to the changing career expectations?
Yeah, and you know what I think has been pretty good, too, just to mention, I think like organizations like yourselves, I think the industry is galvanizing, I think, which is really important at this time. And I've seen that over the past couple of years where more people are kind of coming to not just like recognize this problem, but like try to solve it, which has been great. So I think that, for us, like I think the first thing we really need to do is look at ourselves in the mirror and just like, what do we need to be doing that is not just like, there's two aspects to it to me. It's like, how do you just treat people better? Like, what are some of the things that we could do to embrace just becoming a more human-centric type of an organization? And I think the other thing was just like for a firm, just to ask itself, like, are some of the ways that let's call the normatives that you've been used to, are they really like helping or hurting you? Like, and do you need them in this day and age where this technological sort of disruption, especially since COVID, I think really broke a lot of the kind of games within the game, right?
Right.
Like FaceTime, and you had to be present, and
Yep.
you had to be in the office, and all that was kind of broken, and in a good way. So I think, I do feel like there's kind of looking at it from both lenses, just like, how can you just like be a better organization for people, and what are those things that you would do if you just kind of like erase everything else, forget about the business, forget about the call, like what would you do? And then I think the second thing is like, how can you really use technology to your advantage? So it's, you're creating win-wins. So like you're creating more flexibility, and at the same time, maybe you're creating more engagement. Maybe you're creating, someone that wants to be with your organization more and will give more. And when they are present, they're giving more. So I think that, it's trying to find those ways. And I think a lot of firms have embraced that. I do. I think like when I've, over the years have gone to the different alliance, meetings and have heard from different firms throughout the country. The other thing I really think that's been great is that everyone has looked at this and said, we have a problem. And what are you doing to kind of deal with that? And then another firm may be doing something different. So I think there's a blend of a lot of different ideas that organizations have been using, and I think trying to find, in their own DNA, what works.
Right. And I think that's a great take, because when, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, even when we started talking about this pipeline challenge, the AICPA put out a lot of information, and I will always remember this slide they put out indicating the key audiences that needed to play a role in helping out with the pipeline. And of course, the AICPA and large professional organizations were up there, state CPA societies. And I always remember I think it was the last bullet was actual CPAs and accounting firms. And I've constantly reminded our members about that, because while I think they are willing to jump into this and to help out, I think sometimes people in a profession need to be reminded that it's not just about what your organizations do, it's also about what you do, and your actions and what the firms do. So along those lines, in the open, I mentioned the Forbes article that you wrote, where you talked about if you were designing the accounting profession from scratch today, it wouldn't look anything like the version most firms are still trying to maintain. And I'm a big fan of the book and the movie Moneyball.
Oh, I love that.
And there was a part of that that says, if you were starting something from scratch, would you build it the way that it's evolved? And I think you're expressing kind of the same sort of sentiment. So along those lines, and talking about upsetting the norms that you talked about coming out of the pandemic, one of the norms that I think has existed probably for decades or even a century is that you hired accounting majors for accounting firms. But WIS and other firms are looking at other majors and other disciplines to fill holes in the workforce and take the firm in new directions. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think, what's really interesting is the accounting firm in general has become so dynamic. I mean, so I feel like one of the things that I think there has to be, if the firm hasn't really gone through this, is an awakening to, man, the client has so many needs, right? And as a result of the client having so many needs, I oftentimes have looked at across different, let's say, service areas, where has the client experienced, something that's gone well, whether it's like estate plan, whether it's succession, whether it's they've gone through a sale. A lot of times it's gone well when the accountant is the quarterback, right? So it's like, and it's very true. Like I've experienced many times where we were not the quarterback, and it was it's more of a disaster than it needs to be, right? Because the accountant has like the connection points, the context that we understand. the inner workings sometimes of the organization, the personalities. I think to me it was like trying to like, especially when we were really, because I think there's like, it's really interesting what's happening in the industry, because there's at the same time there's this massive consolidation happening. There's like a deconstruction of the firm itself, right? It's
Hmm.
like, breaking down these walls, barriers, like you said, norms, like how would you, if you were like applying Moneyball and you're this, uprising kind of organization wanting to compete differently, what would you do? So I think it's like having the lens of just like, what does the client need from me today?
Hmm.
And then, looking at how would I do that cost effectively? And of course, you'd bring in technology, right? Like
Obviously,
you
yeah,
like,
right.
and so I think when you think about the deconstruction of like the accounting firm, there's also going to be a deconstruction of the accounting department within so many organizations,
Hmm.
that they've been more static than let's call it like the need a business has versus what their accounting department can provide them is way out of whack. I mean,
Right,
that gap has like, and
right.
so that gap to me is where we come in and where many firms can come in, and how do you do that? And so like for me, it's like you really got to rethink. It's like, yeah, you need an accountant, but you need somebody that understands process, right?
Hmm.
So what are those people like, right? You need somebody that understands technology. And it's not just technology, it's like all elements of technology. It's like, where's the data? Where's the data stored? And then I think it gets even broader and even deeper into what's going to be the system of record, right? So a lot of organizations have had legacy ERP systems that have been the center of intelligence, where that's deconstructing, right? So when you think about the opportunities an accounting firm has around all these elements, as to like we're a part of helping with the reinvention of what that accounting department looks like. I think that opens you really can open up your mind to seeing, oh my gosh, like I have so many different ways of helping the client now. And then to go one step further, think about like the influx of private equity into private business, and that they're monetizing faster. So can you provide, are there other services on wealth management that you can provide that brings you into a whole other level of type of people that you can bring in? So I just feel like the dynamic aspects of what a smaller firm can do today is cost effective. You don't have to be a consolidated or like monster firm to be able to provide all these services. You could be because you could partner up. You could be like a 30-person organization and be more dynamic than a 500-person organization that's more static, which is like is scary for
Right.
for people like us. Like I'm most afraid of the upriser. That to me is
Right.
and can an upriser go direct to our clients at some point and not through us, right?
Right. Yeah. No, it's a
Yeah,
good point. It's a good
yeah,
point. In thinking about what other majors other than accounting would be a good fit for accounting, just coincidentally, I read an article a couple of days ago about computer information science
yeah.
graduates being concerned that artificial intelligence is going to make writing code kind of obsolete. But they have such good data analytics skills. My thought was, well, there's a future for you in accounting. And
Oh yeah.
and so what types of majors does WIS look for, in addition to accounting, obviously? What type of majors does WIS look for to help fill those roles and fill those gaps that you were talking
Yeah,
about a few
and
minutes
that's
ago?
a great point, because like it's interesting because we've been blending expertises lately on like thinking too, like how do you bring a team to the client? So like yeah, data for one is huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've been hiring a lot of data science, data analysts, software developers.
Sure.
We've
Yep.
been really kind of grabbing like in software engineers, because you need to like the architects, you need people that, especially like what's really interesting about AI now is, yes, maybe the coding is going to be somewhat less in demand because AI is big, but somebody needs to know like these, like how the AI works. Like Palantir, for instance, is like a playground, let's call it, right?
Right.
Where you gotta that's where you're kind of bringing in all these different models, and people need to work through these models. They're still writing stuff, right? So you still
Right.
need those people. So, and then we've been looking also at people that have operational backgrounds. So, so that's kind of like on our, more of the technology and data aspects of it, but we also are looking at finance majors are great, right? Because we're seeing that there's a big gap in, let's call it financial planning and analysis within many of the middle market companies, right? So, and then having them on the team because, yeah, you can get this data, but you need people now can put all that data into something that is meaningful.
Right.
Right. So, and then we've also hired economics graduates. So, where it's again, like we're looking at critical thinking. Like, I think what we've been trying to do is move away from, like what the major is and have they demonstrated the ability to solve problems? Are they good critical thinkers? Like what are some of the experiences that they've had that could parallel to, what we're trying to do for our clients, which is come up with solutions, right? But at the same time, what we often will do too is we definitely want them to be rooted in some accounting background, you know? So many times we will find, have they minored in it? Have they taken classes in it? Because it's still the language.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And so like, and we've taken some of that, more of that responsibility on where we'll help supplement their education or classes or stuff like that. But in many places, you still need that background.
Right. Yeah, no, it absolutely helps to at least have some knowledge of it and understand its role in business. Even if you don't know everything that, a CPA knows at that point in time, I think understanding its importance and its role, I think is critical. We've both mentioned artificial intelligence, so I might as well ask the question I think I asked all of our guests. What role is AI playing in reshaping firm service models?
Wow, it's definitely going to disrupt. There's no question, right?
Right.
What we've been trying to do, and it's interesting because it's going to disrupt different areas of your organization. So the first thing I think that we've just been trying to do is understand like where the AI is today, like try to stay on that curve, right? Like as best we can, right? To stay on the curve of, okay, where is it effective? And then how do we open up a lane to bring it in, right? But keep it narrow. Like I think that's the other thing, because I've made a lot of mistakes over the years, and a lot of times it was going too wide at first, and before it was like a technology was ready, or before we had a process laid out in front of us, and I would just like, we got to be doing this, and then like all systems launch, and it's like,
I'm a bit of an experimenter myself. Yeah.
And I love and now they rein me in, but so I think you have to open up a lane for it, but you also have to like do it in a way that's like iterative without disrupting your day to day. And I think that's the challenge for our like firms trying to bring AI in, is like, because you have a machine that's running, right? And that machine is so used to running a certain way for us. Like we've been around since 1969. So that like, yes, there's different like colors of that machine, but it's the same machine for the most part, right? Same software, same everything. So what we've really been, the first thing is we've really been trying to like open up lanes where we see like the AI is ready for us to start to bring in and create some automation. But as this accelerates, oh my Lord, I think that there's going to be a lot of stuff we do that is not going to be the way we do it 3 years from now. I just think it's going to be very different. So we're also trying at the same time to prime more around like getting more of back to, it's interesting. It's like, I feel like the AI is going to help us become better at service, right? Like more hospitality, if you will. And I think that's what I've been really trying to do, is like stay really close to your clients right now, because that to me is like the power the organization has, is those relationships. And as AI evolves, we kind of want to be with it, like we're partnering with it, as opposed to that's replacing us. Now, it may replace many aspects of how we get work done, but I still think for a period of time, there's that human connection is going to be really important. But I do think that if we're not using it in a way to establish more connection, I think, with our clients, then I think that our purpose with that client becomes like diminished, and then they would think like, why would I need them if, you know?
Right, right.
Yeah.
And we have the same perspective here at the society. I mean, we can use AI for a lot of what someone might call, mundane tasks or
Yeah.
routine tasks. But I think accounting firms, you're in the service business, you're in the relationship
Yes.
business. It's the same with us. And we still need that personal connection. So my hope is that AI, for both accounting firms as well as for the NJCPA, AI will free us up to strengthen those personal relationships, so we can spend more time
That's
talking
right.
to members, not less time.
100%.
All right, so let's end the podcast with kind of the $1 million question. What do you think the firm of the future will look like? You brought up PE.
Yeah.
We've been talking about ESOPs. What do you think the firm of the future is going to look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's going to be some. I think the interesting thing is for me is I think there's going to be many different types.
Right.
And I think that's what's real interesting is that there was kind of a homogeneous way that we're all doing things for a while, right?
Yep.
And
not for a while. I mean, probably for decades.
Yeah, forever.
Right? Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so, Don, I think like that to me is like, I feel like there's going to be more differentiation that is going to be at stake and more niche, and at the same time, more gigantic organization. So, but I think for us and probably for a lot of the listeners, I think that we're going to be able to do a lot more with less people. I think that that's a truism. I think we're going to all embrace the technology. I think that there'll be plenty of ways for us to rely on outside providers because there's so much money being poured into, startups right now.
Yep.
That will really help us, I think, as firms to not have to feel the pressure to create in-house. Because there was a period of time where a lot of organizations were almost selling because they felt like I can't afford a technology budget. So I do think, but I would say though, I think that the one theme I really believe, and we talked about it, Don, is I think that you're going to see just much more like firms focused again, like on service. I really do. And going back to almost like what we were founded upon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I think that's a great thing for the profession. And I actually think that's a good thing, just to bring it back to the first question. I think it's a good thing for the pipeline because I think there are a lot of students and recent grads out there who want to serve. They want to do good. They want to feel like their work has meaning. And if they can focus on the service and helping clients of all sorts, I think that's actually going to help the entire profession.
I do too. And I really believe that there is going to be like more firms. And I think it's almost like, I believe this to be more firms, and more firms are employing more accountants, because I do think we're going to end up doing more of the work for companies. I really believe that, like that intersection, I think, is coming where, we're just an extension to so many businesses. And that's why there's going to be so many, opportunities for people coming into the profession. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, Paul, I know we could talk about this topic for probably another hour or so, but we'll stop there. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. This was a great discussion.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Don. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks for listening or watching. For more guidance on the accounting pipeline and firm management, visit njcpa.org/knowledge hubs.